Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Tinley Park Village Zoning Board of Appeals. We'd like to start by saying the pledge to the flag, please, if everyone would stand. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh God, I just made it in time. Okay.
I'm sorry?
I said, oh God, I just made it in time.
Oh.
I have a knee injury.
Okay. Barb, would you like to call the roll?
Paschek,
Here.
Vargas, Fritz, Bettenhausen,
Here.
Gaskell, Schuck,
Here.
Sepisi.
Here. Thank you. Does the staff have any communications before we start at all?
Nope.
Okay, I have one related to the hearing. It is the notice that went to the newspapers and was published about the hearing tonight so that anyone who has any pertinent information could be here. And that's been done. All right. Regarding the minutes of the August 9th regular meeting, can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, the minutes have carried. We have one public hearing tonight, and that public hearing is, please don't let me murder this name, is it Osadar?
Osadar.
Osadar. This public hearing is for Osadars at 16661 Cherry Hill Avenue. It's for a rear yard setback variation and masonry waiver. We'd like to, I'm gonna read this first. The motion states, consider recommending that the village board grant the petitioner, Zachary Zielinski of NV Homes on behalf of John and Margaret Osadar, the owners, an 18-foot setback variation from section VB, Schedule 2 of the zoning ordinance to permit a rear yard setback of 12 feet where the required rear yard setback is 30 feet to construct a 240-foot home addition with a glass and wood exterior instead of brick as required in section 305B exterior masonry requirements of the comprehensive building code at 16661 Cherry Hill Avenue. The variation would allow the petitioner to install a 240 square foot sunroom addition in their rear yard that is 12 feet from their property line and 15 feet from the neighbor's principal structure at 16661 Cherry Hill Avenue in the R4 PD Single Family Residential Cherry Hill Farms Planned Unit Development Zoning District. This addition would be comprised of primarily wooden glass instead of the required matching masonry. Okay, this is the public hearing, so can I have a motion to open the public hearing, please?
Motion. Second.
Okay. All those in favor to open the meeting, please say aye.
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 All opposed? All right. You are the applicant, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. At this point, we'd like to swear you in so that your testimony can be legalized in the minutes and stuff, so if you'll stand for me, please.
You're gonna talk too?
Yeah, I'll stand.
Okay, take your time. There's no hurries here.
No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Mm-hmm.
I've had bad knees. Okay. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give before this commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. The public notice we confirmed, so we're all set to go. So we're going to start with staff, and Dan's going to give us the presentation that you have for us.
Sure. So as just a quick recap, this is a rear yard setback variation the petitioner is requesting. The original petitioner was Zach Zielinski of NV Homes, which I believe was the contractor that was going to build this. It looks like the property owners themselves are actually here today, though, to represent themselves instead of Zach. The So this is, again, a rear yard setback variation. It's for a 240 square foot home addition that the exterior would not be brick as required by the building code. The request is for an 18-foot variation that would allow the setback to be reduced from a required 30 feet to 12 feet. So it's a reduction of 60% there from 30 feet down to 12. Just as a quick recap, because I think it's pretty relevant as to why this lot and why the surrounding lots are kind of the way they are. This is in the Cherry Hill subdivision that is on the west side of 84th Avenue. It's kind of between 163rd and 171st Street. So the northwest corner of town, kind of up by, I believe there's Ted's Greenhouse is pretty prominent over there. The subdivision backs up to Orland Hills, and then part of mostly Orland Park and a small corner of Orland Hills in the northwest. So the subdivision zoned R4 PD, so it's a planned unit development that was called Cherry Hill Farms planned unit development. It's a lot of words, but I'll kind of work through it kind of quick. It was developed in the mid to late 1970s. The plan for this was smaller lots, a denser subdivision. Be able to keep it looking like a single-family home subdivision is pretty typical in Tinley Park, but they wanted to make it a little bit denser. Some of the goals of that were or from the villages and the builder's side was, could they get a more quality construction, brick? Could they do kind of more public park and open space in the subdivision when they reduced the lot sizes? And then could they make the homes a little more affordable, because there was a little bit of a gap in terms of kind of that starter or mid-range home. We had a lot of expensive homes, a lot of older homes, but they were trying to fill that gap of nice new homes, but maybe not, McMansion, bigger homes. So that was kind of their goals, but still maintaining, again, that single-family home, traditional setbacks from the street, that traditional kind of look you get with it. Most of the homes are either ranch style or 1.5 stories, so kind of like a split level. With most of these homes, the buildable kind of envelope, as we call it, so kind of once you take into account the setbacks, the front, the sides, it leaves this what we call a buildable envelope. So most of those are either maximized or close to being maximized throughout the subdivision. Sometimes there's areas where you can do additions, but for the most part, it was kind of, they reduced the lot sizes and then built out what they wanted to build in terms of the homes that were there. Most of the setbacks on the subdivision too, here's just kind of a random sample I took out of it. Most of the setbacks are all kind of designed similar to like puzzle pieces. So if on one lot you have a smaller 2, 3, 5 foot setback, there's usually a bigger setback on another side. The same goes kind of with the rear yards. Some of them, they needed to squeeze in a little bit in the rear yards, but then, the next lot will have a little bit bigger lot. So that way they kind of keep that openness, at least the visual presence of it. So that was kind of their plan there was, can we get all these little puzzle pieces to fit while still keeping that single family vision here. The subdivision was kind of planned this way, so all existing properties owners out there kind of bought into this. It wasn't retroactively put on the property. So the zoning regulations and then all of the homes in there have been built with these already existing. Ultimately, pretty much all of these homes, there's little room for expansion. Some of them have spaces where you can do it. It kind of varies though, depending on the lot layout, the lot size, and then the specific home they picked. Some of them have, garages that kind of extend towards the street. Some have it in the back. Ultimately, it does kind of maximize, limit what they can do out there, and it is a pretty dense subdivision in terms of what you typically see in this area in Tinley Park or in Orleans, just for a single-family subdivision. Ultimately, the existing density really isn't a hardship to continue to add density to a subdivision. So we understand it's kind of a tricky situation that limits an ability to expand your home, but ultimately that exists for all of the homes that were out here. Here is a missing slide in here, but the existing lot is 9,152 square feet. It's one of the larger lots in the subdivision due to the additional corner lot width. So even though most of the lots here are still reduced in size, they still added that kind of additional width on a corner lot because it does kind of limit what you can do on that property, because you have to, basically your side yard is functioning as an entire street's front yard. So this lot is 88 feet in width, where your typical interior lots on the subdivision range from 52 to 72 feet. So pretty tight there. That is the existing home there. It's on the corner of 167th and Cherry Hill Avenue. And then that's kind of a picture of where they're planning on putting the addition. To the left is the petitioner's property, and then to the right is the neighboring property and the side of their principal structure. Again, the zoning's R4, single family, Cherry Hill Farms PUD. Smaller lots, denser subdivision, 1 to 1.5 story homes. Trying to keep that single family feel. As with kind of most zoning districts, is this one, even though it was designed to be denser, any zoning district you go into, you eventually kind of hit a point where you can't build anymore. You hit that maximum envelope. These were just kind of designed already at that maximum density. So it is a unique situation, but it does kind of exist throughout the entire development and the entire subdivision. So there is one previous variation that was granted in the area, and we just like to bring up any type of situations that are in the immediate area that might be a similar situation. So this one came in for also a similar kind of rear yard addition that they were adding on. So at that time, it was 2007, I believe the ZBA approved this one. With the main kind of caveats to why it was approved was that it went to the rear of the property, but that the rear of the property is an open space and creek, kind of a public space back there. It didn't expand towards the house, and then it wasn't visible from the public way. So when you're driving on the street or you're walking on the park, you didn't actually visually see any difference here. Unless you were in one of the neighboring properties' rear yards, you wouldn't really see that. So that was kind of their caveats as to why that one made sense at the time. So the petitioner's proposal is up here now. So they have an existing 371 square foot deck. It's a low profile deck, kind of similar to a patio. That they use just kind of for their outdoor enjoyment. So their goal is to replace that. The footprint will be reduced, but they want to do a sunroom. This would be primarily glass and wood. The roof material, we asked for plans and materials, and I never heard a response back from the contractor on that. So we were looking for material samples too, just so you guys, part of this request again is the masonry requirement, which I'll kind of get into in a little bit. So we were trying to look into, as part of that request, what is this actually going to look like? But the image on the bottom here is kind of the best image, that primarily glass and open, similar to kind of a covered porch. In this case, though, it's pretty substantial. Unlike a deck or a patio, this will be visible from the street. It will be visible from the neighbors, and it is permanent. So patios, decks can kind of be changed. This will be it's considered an addition to the actual house. So it has to meet all the same building codes as a house. The only thing that really changes is if it's like if it's unconditioned space, there's some, you know, you don't have to insulate it quite as much. Some of the building materials can go down a little bit, but for the most part, and if they wanted to convert it in the future, and that tends to happen a lot, whether it's permitted or not, is, you know, you have this outdoor nice kind of patio area, it's built pretty well, and then you throw a heater or an AC unit in it, and slowly starts to become living space. So you could do that legally with permits. You'd have to upgrade, I think, some of the building code related items, but it tends to happen whether it's permitted or not in a lot of these situations where it actually becomes living space. So, but as their proposal sits, it would just be an unconditioned 3-season or sunroom, depending on how you want to classify it. So this would encroach 18 feet into the required rear yard. The existing home encroaches by 3 feet as it is, so it was approved. The existing home was approved encroaching already into the rear yard, and this would go an additional. An additional 12 feet from that. So ultimately going 18 feet into the required side yard, 12 feet from the rear property line. There is an easement running through the back, so a back utility easement there that's 10 feet wide. So they're 12 feet. They're 2 more feet back from that utility easement, and that's due to just the foundation clearances and stuff that builders need to not encroach underground into that utility easement where there is, I believe, storm and water at least running through there. There may also be gas and electric, but we don't have files for that. So again, this will be glass, wood, and then the unknown, the kind of unknown roof material, which they may be able to, the petitioners may be able to clarify in a little bit. So the building code masonry waiver is not something that you guys typically see here. This will typically goes to the community development committee of the village board and then to the village board. In this case, we found it relevant to this case and to add it in terms of the recommendation, because that'll kind of be going at the same time to the village board. So typically the building code requires that any addition you do, if your entire first floor is brick, that any addition you do also be brick. If you have siding, then you have to do siding. It carries over the building material standards. When a builder comes in, we kind of hold them to, we want quality homes built with quality materials. This kind of ensures that doesn't fade as you kind of get additions or people alter their homes, that we keep that level up. It helps keep property values higher or level, and so that way the quality doesn't kind of decrease over time. In this case, they're doing kind of the sun or 3-season rooms. We have had those constructed before of brick. They're still primarily glass and windows, and you can have that, but basically the beams, everything you would see kind of on the outside that's structural would be brick. Outside of the windows, doors, and the roof could be other materials, but the rest, kind of the beams, the support structures would be brick in this situation, and we have had those built at other times in the village. So the setback regulations for this lot are 25 feet in the front yard, 30 feet in the back, and then there's 7.5 feet on the side yards for a total of 15. So that's the typical R4 zoning requirements. Obviously, throughout the subdivision, homes were kind of adjusted again to be able to encroach into those some of those setbacks and be reduced where others were kind of increased, kind of fitting the whole subdivision as a whole together. They do have a small buildable space on this lot, which is pretty typical of the homes out here, kind of where the garage extends out and then you have the home in the back. There's kind of this square space. It's on the red circle on this image of where you could do a home addition. We have had 2 other properties in this area that I was able to find. There may be others out there, but I was sifting through quite a bit of records and not the greatest filing system that we're moving over to a much better one right now. But what I was able to find was at least 2 out in that subdivision that have done this before. And it looks like they had originally kind of been in the same situation where they wanted to do a side addition or a rear addition, couldn't meet the code, and then were able to fill in this front here. So they could do a patio, a porch, pretty much anything in a sunroom. They would still need to comply with the masonry requirements. There's instances where that's been waived, especially if you design it to look good, where if you were doing some kind of atrium or sunroom type thing there, you could do that in the front. So again, this lot too, these have been the existing zoning requirements since this was built. They haven't changed, they haven't gotten stricter or less strict. So it's been what's been out there for some time. This property, you could almost take this lot, reduce the width, and carry it throughout the subdivision. Some are actually a lot tighter than this, and there's no room to do anything. Other ones do. The house kind of gets flipped and you get that little square in back, and some homes have been able to expand in their back. It just kind of, again, depends on the layout of the house. So, but this overall lot layout and the situation that's occurred here is pretty typical throughout the subdivision. So we're pretty concerned with anything that's approved for this lot. It can kind of get carried over into any other lot. We understand there's some personal stuff and kind of convenience factor to where they want it. Again, as most variations that we talk about, the hardships have to be related to the property, and we understand that there's sometimes dogs, medical hardships, other kind of personal factors that when it comes to our zoning code, which kind of has to be equally enforced throughout the village, that typically if you're getting a variation, it's what's unique with this property. We can't meet the building code, or we can't meet the zoning code, so and it's really unique. So here we really need this variation. In this situation, again, if you look at this lot, it's similar to everything else that we have out there. Our concern again with that is if you continue to add, kind of encroach towards single-family homes, you start encroaching towards windows and doors, and you start kind of feeling claustrophobic, and it's not what the majority of these people bought in to out here, and it could really kind of change the character of what that community is out there if this got carried over. And again, we've had some of these requests come forward, at least enough where we know this would come up. We have people ask for additions. We usually direct them to code compliant options. So if this comes up, kind of just like corner lot fences, you'd likely have someone point to this lot and say, well, they got a variation, why not me? So that's kind of our concern going forward. With any type of variation approvals like this. Do you want me to go through the findings of fact now, or do you want me to wait till?
Well, we can let the petitioners speak.
Okay, yeah, we can let them talk, and then I can.
Would you folks like to
Yes.
go right ahead, please? Step
I'd
up
like
to
you
the
to, and
podium.
then I will.
Okay, that's
But I'm
just
gonna need
fine.
to sit over there with a microphone, because I don't have that kind of accident. I need a microphone.
You can sit here.
Wherever is fine. He goes first. That's Ben.
I wish I'd known that I could have brought a PowerPoint presentation. I would have done that. I brought lovely hard copies.
Yeah, if you need to pass those out, we can
Pardon?
do that, or
No,
if you
we're
want.
And I think we'll
Okay.
we'll
If
pa-
you
we'll,
want me to-
we'll pass around
Excuse me, I'm
hard
gonna interrupt for one
copies. That's
second.
right.
Commissioner Gaskell has just arrived.
Oh,
He called and said he was gonna be running a little bit behind, so we're gonna give a moment for him to get his electronics up, and then we'll
Yes,
continue.
of course.
okay?
no.
Yes, we do.
We invited him specifically for tonight. There's the PowerPoint, and then the other stuff was there too.
I read through this.
Jim, it's been mentioned to me by the attorney that because of your arrival time, you'll need to abstain from voting.
Okay,
Okay?
can I still ask questions?
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Please, sir. Sorry for the delay.
Okay. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Vitter for the background. I didn't know a lot of the facts about the subdivision. Thank you for providing some historical context. I'm going to give you more of a personal, less technical point of view on this. My name is John Osadar. I have lived in the house at 16661 Cherry Hill in Tinley Park with my wife Margaret and our son John Noah for over 25 years now. Margaret raised our son who has autism. He's 31 now. He still lives with us well for the rest of our lives. When he went to high school, she went back to college, became an RN, worked as an RN at Palos Community Hospital for a number of years, and had to give up her job due to health reasons because she has chronic autoimmune diseases. Worked on and off until 2015 when her illness finally forced her to essentially retire. She has Sjogren's, vasculitis, resulting insomnia and pain. If you know who Harold Ramis was, the comedian, actor, director, writer, he died of one of the same conditions that Margaret has. So last year we decided to try a therapy for her, which was essentially hydrotherapy. We got a portable hot tub. I don't know if you've seen those. They're about $500. You can get them on Amazon. Put it on the deck behind our house, and she used it pretty much every day, and it provided a significant amount of relief. Hydrotherapy is a proven treatment for a lot of the conditions that she's got. Vasculitis, in case you don't know, it's a leakage of the major blood vessels of the arteries in the part of the body, in her case, in her legs. So her legs swell up. She gets massive spots. She was treated with steroids, and those actually exacerbated a lot of the other problems like insomnia. Anyway, as far as that is concerned, as I said, that therapy worked wonderfully. And then, of course, winter came, and you can't have a portable hot tub outside when the temperature is below freezing. So that ended that. So that's the background. That's a personal background of the situation. So as far as our request, we have a 32-year-old, our house is 32 years old, and the deck is 32 years old from what we can tell. It was originally built with the house. It has deteriorated because it was put up on ground that has settled unevenly, and as a result, it's actually somewhat of a safety hazard for us. So we've been planning on replacing that for a while, but of course that can be a significant expense, so we wanted to come up with the right answer and not waste our money. When the situation came up with the hydrotherapy, we decided to pursue getting a sunroom addition where we could put a hot tub permanently. Margaret could have her hydrotherapy year-round, and it would essentially address two problems: the deck that we need to get rid of and the health issues that she has. So that's why we are here today. So as far as the variance is concerned, I understand the issue with the setbacks that are required on the property. I think the math was a little bit off. 3 + 12 isn't 18. So if we're going from the current situation to a 12-foot setback, I think our house is actually about 6 feet too close to the property line. So in our subdivision, as you've pointed out, houses were built on smaller lots. If you read about Cherry Hill Farms in the real estate literature, they brag about the quarter-acre lots. We don't have quarter-acre lots. If we had a quarter-acre lot, we wouldn't be here today, at least not about the setback, because we would have plenty of room for this addition. In actual fact, the distance between our house and our neighbor's house, if you saw in the one picture, is probably, what, about 22, 23 feet? And it showed that picture. This is a picture.
Pass them around. We got
I'll just hand this to you. You can pass it around. That picture shows you.
Yes? I got it.
That picture shows you what it looks like, the distance between our neighbor's house, the side of our neighbor's house, and our property line. And of course, on the other side, on the other side of our property line is this rear yard that is already something like 6 feet too small, according to the zoning ordinances. So that's the current situation. Now, I understand that there were reasons for allowing this back in the 70s. I'm guessing that the unstated reason is that the builder, in order to build a subdivision, wanted higher density to produce more houses so they could sell more houses, make more money, which is fine. I mean, I'm not one to judge making money. The builder also, by the way, was allowed to cut other corners. For example, in our house, the builder put our garage, our family room, our downstairs bathroom, the lights in the laundry room, and the dishwasher on a single electrical circuit. Nobody ever said anything about that.
We fixed that.
They also dumped a lot of the construction debris in our yard and then put a little bit of layer of topsoil over that so that the grass would grow.
So I got
Every time we
in my ground, nothing grows.
Every time we try to dig a hole for a bush or plant something, I come up with bolts and chunks of what look like pipe, clay that was clearly dumped there. It couldn't be clay that high up if there was topsoil put on there. So all that was allowed back then because I'm guessing the builder got some leeway in order to build a subdivision, because of course that was a time when Tinley and Orland were in very intense competition for all the people who were moving out in that direction. We've had to live with those cut corners or get them fixed at our expense. We've been living there for 25 years and we've been paying for that along with paying our mortgage. So that's one aspect of this variance. So as I mentioned, we wanted to replace the deck that we already have. And if you want to see what that looks like, pass these. So you can see what the uneven settling of the ground has resulted in. And that's what we have right now. Now, if you know how much replacing a deck with something other than just a slab of concrete costs, that's a fairly significant expense, especially when you have medical expenses, you have other expenses that families have. And we certainly have not wanted to waste money on something that would not be a good solution. So when we contracted with Envy, they showed us this as a prototype. That's from their sales division. And that looked ideal for what we were looking for. I mean, we wanted an enclosure that wouldn't be an enclosure, wouldn't block the view of the outside, and that would, on the other hand, be covered and have an entrance from inside the house so that even if it's 10 below zero, Margaret could go out there and either sit in the room and see nature, or sit in a therapeutic spa hot tub and relieve her symptoms. So that's why we contracted with Envy, and that's why we're here. And I understand the issues with property values and aesthetics. I mean, I believe that the village is responsible to its residents for maintaining the quality of appearance of the neighborhood. And as far as that's concerned, I think we have other issues around our house that are much worse than having a sunroom that's 12 feet by 20 feet. For example, here's village property across the street from us. This is what we see every day out the front of our house, out our front window.
It's a park.
It's a park. It's a park, and if you look at what the bushes look like, this is what we see. Aesthetically pleasing. It's been that way for several years. The village takes care of the park, but nothing's been done about those.
See, that's the park district, not the village, though.
We're talking about
Clarify
aesthetic,
that.
what we see. What we
Right,
see when we look out
because
our
part
window.
of the issue here is
Right?
supposed to be the aesthetics of
It's the pictures on our side.
this sunroom would clash aesthetically with the building.
It might
and
not
the
look good
neighbors.
enough for
It
them.
could
We're
affect
showing
property
you
values
what
as
we
well.
see.
You need one at a time here.
This is-
We're having a hard
Chairman?
time.
Please.
Okay,
I have to insist one person at a time. I have
Okay,
hearing
sorry.
aids and I'm having a
Yeah,
lot of
can we
trouble
just,
hearing.
Everybody's going to get a chance to
I
speak.
apologize. I thought you were understanding. I'll shut up.
Well, we are understanding, ma'am, but we can't hear two people
I
talking at
can't
one
I
time.
apologize. I'll be
So
quiet.
that's another example of, that's a corner of the park. And that is a lovely watering hole for the geese in our neighborhood. Every time it rains for about anywhere from a few days to a few weeks, that fills with water. The village hasn't bothered doing anything about that. End result being that we have visits from geese to that watering hole, who then go into our yard, eat the grass and leave deposits on the grass. And if we chase them away, they run out into 167th Street and stop traffic or get hit by cars. Again, that could be easily corrected, but the village doesn't do anything about that. And the village very thoroughly, and we appreciate it, replaced all the ash trees because of the emerald ash borer. And certainly that was a problem, but the village still allows parkway trees, which I assume are their responsibility, at least in some measure, that look like this. And that's not very aesthetically pleasing either.
If there's dead parkway trees too, you can report them to Public Works, just so you know.
When was this
They'll come
picture taken,
remove
sir?
them.
A few days ago. All these pictures are recent. I just took these when I knew that
Okay.
we would have to make this appearance. And of course, the village also repaved our street, Cherry Hill, which was, I guess, a good thing. And here is what they did to our driveway. We're one of the few that are so lucky to have an asphalt driveway. And essentially what they did is they chopped up the end of our driveway and then they filled it in with what looks like black kitty litter. So we now have a driveway which is partly the way it used to be and partly this, what looks like, you know, that asphalt patch material that you can buy at Home Depot.
This is the new part up here, and this is your driveway?
Yeah, that's our driveway, and then above it is the part that they filled in, and above that is the street.
Okay.
So that's not very aesthetically pleasing either, at least as far as I'm concerned.
But that's what asphalt looks like when they put it down.
The
Everywhere you-
street doesn't look like that. If they put down a new driveway, it doesn't look like that. They essentially threw a bunch of asphalt down and pressed it down enough that it doesn't come loose yet. Anyway, our neighbors were asked whether they wanted their curbs replaced, and they opted out. We were never asked. Not only were we not asked, but when the contractor came around to tear up the curb, they didn't even bother telling us to move our cars out. I drove across the parkway grass in order to get my car out. But again, that's, you know, that's an aesthetic issue, I guess. Another problem that we have, this is again in our immediate neighborhood, is that although I believe the village has ordinances for proper maintenance of property, we have foreclosed or short sale properties, including one that's 2 houses down from us, and they're allowed to maintain this aesthetically pleasing yard. Those were taken today, by the way. And this, in particular, house down 167th from us, which Zillow, by the way, says is worth $257,000. Talk about preserving property values. It sold for $176,000 last March, which I'm guessing was a short sale. Might have been I don't think it was a foreclosure. And I believe it's currently vacant. As of a few months ago, the new owner listed that he was seeking a short-term rental. I've seen nothing further. There doesn't seem to be anyone living there. And the lot looks like that. So if you're trying to preserve property values or the aesthetics of our neighborhood, it doesn't seem like that's working. And I don't see how a 12 by 20 quality built sunroom will impact the aesthetics or the property values more than all of that nonsense that's going on. Now, on the other hand, my wife, who is chronically ill, she's, besides being an RN, she also has a lot of artistic ability. And this is what we've done with our property. A lot of this was her design and some hard work by her brother and me. And that's our yard. 3 of those. Again, those are basically within the last week or so. So we are trying to maintain the appearance and the property value and keep the neighborhood looking good. And I really don't think it's too much to ask that an exception be made for a family that's been in the village for over a quarter century at the same location, who one of the people living there has been a well-regarded nurse in the community. People who don't cause trouble, pay their taxes, do the things that people are supposed to do to be part of their community. You talk about, well, one-time exceptions. Apparently a house got a one-time exception in the subdivision because of the fact that they backed up onto a ditch or a creek or something. So why not a one-time exception for a hardworking nurse who is now too ill to continue working and who could really use some help? She's applied for, or she's in the process of getting Social Security disability. I don't know if there are ADA questions here or not. Well, that's for a lawyer to decide, or a judge. But I would respectfully ask for you to consider this as a special circumstance. I thank you for your time. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Ma'am?
I'd like to save mine for the end and hear you.
No, this is the end.
This is the
Are you not going to talk anymore?
No, there's a public hearing, ma'am. The way it works is there's a public hearing during which testimony is allowed. You're allowed, as the petitioners, to both provide your account of the reasons for, just as your husband just did. You're allowed to provide what you need to say in support of your petition. Then once that is done, the hearing there'll be some rebuttal remarks from perhaps the village to Mr. Ritter to clarify any loose ends. The public hearing and the evidentiary portion is then closed, and there'll either be a motion to approve the variance or consider the variance, and there's discussion at that point. But at that point, the evidence is closed. So if you want to speak and be heard as part of the public hearing, you can do so now.
So I get up and talk, and then you guys vote, yes or no?
You get up and talk, and then the public hearing would be closed, and then
Vote in private, right?
Do I get an answer right now?
No.
They don't vote in private, they vote.
Like right now, though?
Yes.
Like
It'll be done this evening.
anything like TV?
I'm sorry?
I'm saying like if I get up and talk,
Right.
and then I'm done, and then you guys are all gonna vote right now, real time, yay or nay, and let me know if I get to build my variance or not? Am I understanding this correctly?
By the end of the meeting.
By the end of the
We'll have
meeting.
to
The hearing will have
And
to
that'll
be
be a
today.
that'll be a recommendation to the village.
And one thing I must clarify, even though we're in hearing right now, is this is only a board that recommends to the village board. So if they say yes or they say no, it's ultimately the decision
Okay.
of the village board, just so you know.
Okay.
So either way, you still have one more step for a variation, but this is your opportunity to provide
I
evidence.
just wanna know you're gonna say yes or no to me, right?
I don't say anything.
Well, everybody vote.
We vote tonight, yes.
Right.
You'll know what we say.
Right, that's
But
what I-
you won't know for sure whether you'll be
Yeah,
able to
no,
build
I
it or
don't
not.
need that. I just
But
want-
this is
yeah.
the hearing portion, so this is your
We did
opportunity.
this on our own, so I want to make sure I'm understanding.
Mhm.
It's not the case, and I don't want to get up and waste my air and my water.
No,
But
it's
if
your,
that's
this
the
is your
case,
opportunity
that's
to,
what we thought it was because we did a lot of research on our own, then yeah, I do want to get up.
this is your opportunity to provide testimony at the hearing.
Okay, that's great, thank you. I want to make sure that, because I don't want to waste my time. No, I'm good. Let me clutch my purse. I was going to steal this Timmy Park, right?
Do you want to, we can maybe pull the chair up.
No,
if
I'm
you
good.
want to.
You can sit at your microphone. No, I'm good.
Talk back here.
No, but I'm too loud. I'm a Sagittarius. I don't want to blast your eardrums. And I get in people's personal space and freak them out. It's getting late, I'm sorry. And being a Sagittarius, I'm windy.
Hey, ma'am, although we know here, just say your name again for the record.
Margaret Osadar.
Thank you.
I hold still a legal RN license. I did work for Palos Community Hospital for 12 years. And then I worked out in the community as a hospice nurse in Inglewood, back of the yards, Roseland. I did hospice for gangbangers, their families. I've seen shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, and if I'm not, am I allowed to swear, or is it bad? Because I'm a nurse, I'm a first responder. Your firemen do it, and your cops do it. Can I do it, or am I going to get penalized? I'll try to curb my nurse, my first responder. But I don't fit in many places as a nurse. Okay, I don't understand all this stuff. It's over my head. So I'm gonna talk from my heart as a mom, as a village tax-paying citizen, and now as I also, what he didn't say, I own a company. I have an LLC license. I operate out of my home. I do have a 31-year-old autistic. We do. I always claim it because I'm a Sagittarius. 31-year-old autistic son. I grew up in this village with Jean Bruno and Danny Bruno, her son. He's 2 years older than my son. Rick Bruno, she's aware. Facebook friends. I moved into this village with the assumption that if I got diabetes and I needed an amputation, I could have a ramp anywhere I wanted because I'm a free citizen and I pay my taxes. That stupid condemned building that you saw pictures of, some lady lived there. I caught her chihuahua 4 times. I have busted up fights. I patrol my neighborhood. I have Ring cameras on my property. I'm part of a neighborhood watch. And I listen to all this. I'm sorry, no disrespect, okay? Blah, 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 stuff I don't understand, okay? What I understand is this word, I wrote it on my hand because it was pissing me off. Encroachment. Encroachment. And I'm going to pick up where he left off because he works for the federal government. He's a smart dude. I'm sure you picked up on that. Encroachment. I wrote it on my hand. Word roach is in there. And that's what my village has become. Roach. My property is the nicest looking shit in my whole neighborhood. You can take a walk. I walk my puppy. Well, actually, I can't walk him. He's been walking him by proxy for me. I make it about 1 or 2 or 3 times a week around the block, which I was feeling like I was really getting sicker. But it's 2/3 of a mile. We're highly educated. I have a bachelor's degree. He has a master's degree. I think it's ridiculous that I have to come here and do this shit. I do. I'm not going to lie to you. You look at the properties, you got recent pictures of my stuff. So there's been drive-bys. You've been taking pictures. Good. I'm glad. I'm glad you're in real time and you're present. Because on the Ring cameras, we're now getting not just burglaries, but we're getting breaking and entering. That's right. And all this stuff is documented, video documented. We've written stuff about it. Because I'm not going to be pushed around. I'm not. It's not a threat. I'm just not. This is a violation of my Americans with Disabilities Act. I have a right to hydrotherapy. You can Google it on your smartphones. It's an actual therapy. We give it at the hospital, all hospitals. I've worked for Payless, Little Company, Advocate, all kinds of places in my career. I help people. I'm a helper. I also am very loud. I know you all know Jean Bruno, so I ask her how I get things done flamboyantly. I'm 1 step away from news cameras. I want to find out who's on my side and who's not. I gave $7,000 to Envy Services. I don't know if I'm a victim of elder abuse or what. I don't got my damn blueprints. They refunded my money because they didn't like dealing with me. Oops, this is too flimsy. They didn't like dealing with me. I don't blame them. I'm formidable. Not physical, it's not a threat. I'm educated, and I don't take crap because I'm a first responder. I saved his life. Choked on a baked potato. I did Heimlich. I'm not normal. I'm not a civilian. I'm in a 95% divorce bracket because I'm a nurse. I'm also in another one because I have a disabled son. I don't fuck around. That can go on public record because I don't care. I am going to get to the bottom with my husband, who's brilliant. I'm loud and he's brilliant. I don't do too bad. I'm going to get to the bottom of what happened because in April, first week, 2018, I gave $7,000 to Envy. I got no blueprints. I got no addition. My 4th of July sucked. I got 2 splinters on my foot. I'm trying to potty train a puppy on a fucking terrible deck. And I thought it was you guys. But I think now that it's Envy. They returned my money because they're afraid of me. I'm sorry, I'm licking your freaking microphone. They returned my money. That's called breach of contract, in addition to my violation of ADA. Also discrimination, because I know Rich Tinley gets to do whatever the hell they want. So all I really want to know is yes or no from you, and then I will kindly go home because I'm tired and my fucking knee hurts. And I will continue with my lawyer. That's all I got. I'm glad it's to the end because I'm tired and this sucks. I don't know how you do it. I'm a hands-on nurse. I'm sorry for being disrespectful. But I think to have to beg for this, all I want to do is rip up a fucked up deck that's horrible and put something nice on it. All my neighbors have shit. And that's what I got to say. And ow, my knee.
Dan, do you have anything that you wish to?
Yeah, I guess I'll just make a couple of quick points, and we can move to your guys. So what was proposed here cannot be conditioned as it was proposed. So it can't be conditioned space. What MB Homes produced to us was a sunroom. So with what they're proposing would not be able to be heated or have AC in it. So it's part of, if that's what they're proposing to do, they would need to redesign this to actually be conditioned space and meet the building codes. And it's the international building code, so that's not something that we can waive here. It's not something the village board can waive. That's an international building code requirement. So I guess if that's their plan, I would recommend for them to, whatever architect or builder you end up going with, make sure they know it'll be conditioned space, since they'll be able to design.
Can I just respond?
Sure.
We're not planning on a heated space, but an enclosed space. I mean, you can get one of these very similar to this 12 by 20 sunroom. You can get an enclosure, which a lot of people do. They'll put that on a patio. They'll put a hot tub in it. They use it year-round, but you have to walk out of your house. Let's say there's 2 feet of snow and it's 10 below zero. You have to walk out of your house, 2 feet through 2 feet of snow at 10 below zero temperatures to go in there. The hot tub itself does not suffer under those conditions, and it may be a little bit cool in there, but you get in the water and it's fine. Now, if you eliminate the problem of having to walk across the 2 feet of snow in the 10 below zero conditions, which is what we're proposing, you can use that room. Now, it's not going to be a balmy 72 degrees in there, but neither is it going to be 10 below zero. So we're not talking about what you're saying, a conditioned space with heat and all that.
Okay.
We're just talking about an attached space equivalent to what a lot of people put up, and I'm not aware of what the zoning and building codes require, but I'm pretty sure if we just put a patio out there and put one of those standalone rooms on there, that you probably wouldn't be able to object to that.
It depends what you're proposing. Is it?
Well, can I put, let's say, a 12 by 12 enclosed separate from the house?
Not to dive too far into it, but if it's closer than 10 feet to the house, then it has to meet the principal structure setbacks. So
Closer than 10 feet to the house. So we couldn't possibly put anything on a patio or deck.
Correct. You wouldn't be able to do any separate structure unless it was 10 feet from the house, which...
And that would be
allowed.
considered a separate structure, even though it would not be a permanent structure.
Correct. If it's closer than 10 feet to the house...
So
then
basically, the village has us locked in where we essentially can't do anything unless you grant us the variance. So that's why we're asking for it.
What about the kitchen?
Well, thanks for clarifying that. I didn't know if you guys were getting at conditioning the space, but that makes sense. If you can keep it heated, then it's not going to freeze. So just, I guess, a couple other points I'd say is we have a property maintenance department. So if you have, I think you submitted the photos, so I can give those to them. If you have any issues,
My point
we always...
that we have complaints. My point is that the village is trying to be diligent about maintaining property values for its residents, and I admire and approve and cheer you for doing that. You're trying to maintain the property values in the village. I'm a village resident, I want my property values maintained. You're trying to maintain the aesthetics of the neighborhoods. Again, very much in favor of that. But the village falls far short in those areas in things that the Zoning Board of Appeals doesn't have any control over. And on the other hand, what we're doing, our neighbors have no problem with. We've talked to them. From my personal opinion, I think what we are talking about doing is a lot more attractive than seeing an old rickety deck out your window. This won't even encroach on the neighbor's view because in actual fact, this addition would be, it would back up to the side of their garage. It's not like they would look out their bedroom window and all they would see is addition. What they see right now is our backyard, and that's what they would see if the addition were built, because again, it's just, they have their garage, and the addition would be where their garage is.
Okay.
So as far as the village maintenance stuff, it's just an example.
Sure. I just wanted you guys to know if there is issues, we'll be glad to look into them.
As quite as diligent about maintaining property values and the aesthetics of neighborhoods as the zoning board of appeals seems to be.
Sure. Yeah, and we're reviewing the permit and what you guys are proposing to do now. That's our job. It's their job to enforce the code as it is.
I have no problem
And it's
with you doing your job.
Yeah, and it's a similar, I mean, this is the same code that exists, not the exact same setbacks, but a similar, you know, you have to meet setbacks for additions as any other
And
town.
clearly those rules are made to be broken because they certainly were broken in our subdivision.
Sure. Yeah, and they were,
And
it was
I
approved
think
to
we
be
know
that.
the reasons. I mean, I assume that nobody here was on the ZBA in the late 70s. All of you look much too young to have been on the zoning board of appeals back then. So I'm guessing this was done by previous generations. But I know what the environment was like back in those days. I lived in Homewood back then. And Tinley and Orland were in fierce competition for all those people who wanted to move out a little bit further southwest. So packing a few more houses into the existing amount of land, you get the builder to build the subdivision, builder wants more houses to make more money, and so you allow variances. Well, the problem is that those variances, now the subdivision's 40 years old. Okay? Nobody's looking at the subdivision as if it were new houses or relatively new houses. These are now older houses. In a lot of cases, the people who bought them originally are no longer there. The character of the subdivision has gone from being, you know, new houses and, you know, starter homes or second homes to houses that people have either lived in for 25 years like us, or houses that people are buying because they can't afford to live in Brookside Glen, or they can't afford to live down 179th Street, where there's a lot of these little additions on the backs of houses. If you take a look there, let's drive down 179th from 88th Avenue West, and you look at the backs of the houses, you can see the backs of the houses down 179th Street. And hey, here's one brick house, but the addition isn't brick. Here's another one that's got this big geodesic dome-looking addition on the corner of 179th and 88th Avenue. You look at all those houses, but you know what? All those houses are $375,000, $395,000. And the people over there have those half or quarter acre or larger lots that we allegedly have, but we don't.
So I'd like to interrupt for a minute here. We, as a commission, have no jurisdiction over those areas unless something is brought to our attention. The only situation we can deal with here as a group tonight is your house and your proposal for your addition. So I would suggest that maybe we move on and see where this ends up.
That's fine.
All right?
So we need the staff findings.
Yeah, you got your staff findings.
Yeah, so these are the staff put together findings of fact. If and when you guys vote, if you want to change anything, you guys are always welcome to adjust or change these depending on what your findings are. So these are our draft ones that we prepared. The first three are kind of statutorily need to be met in order to approve the variation, and then there's some additional ones that we include. The village has included as part of the review. So the first three, the first one is that the property in question can't yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under the conditions allowed by the regulations in the district. So can it make a return if you follow it? Can it yield a reasonable return if it follows the regulations? The summary here is that it's a reasonable return under the conditions of the district it's located. The petitioner has compliant options. It's an existing home that they bought at the value with the current setup. So it would be a market rate return on them selling the existing property. The second standard is that the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances. In this situation, the subdivision is unique, but it was approved through, at the time, 4 variations. Every lot is very similar in this subdivision, so this subject lot physically is not in any way unique compared to the majority of lots in this subdivision. The third one is that the variation, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. So the variation, if granted, does change how the neighborhood was designed to be. Additionally, this could set a precedent. We're worried due to not being unique, this could carry over to other areas in the neighborhood, and that this could overall change the character of the neighborhood and potentially lower property values if you do increase density. So then there's the additional ones. I just kind of highlighted 3 that I think could apply to this situation. Ones that the particular physical surrounding shape and topographical condition of the property involved would result in a hardship upon the owner as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the law was carried out. So with that one, also, I guess with that one, they have another option to meet the code, and that it's not a hardship related to the physical property itself. The second one I have highlighted is that the conditions upon which the petitioner for the variation is, the petition that the variation is based would not be applicable to other property in the same zoning classification. So it's zoned R4 PD in the Cherry Hill Farms PD. So this situation would be very applicable to other properties in that subdivision. And then the last one I have highlighted at the bottom is that this wouldn't impede or impair adequate supply of light or air on adjacent property. Also increase danger of fire. In this situation, it would meet the building codes, but would reduce the amount of light, not to an extreme degree, but depending on how you look at it, you're putting homes closer together, and you're kind of reducing the open space in the overall subdivision, as well as if this type of situation gets carried out through the subdivision, that could be a greater concern there, as well as the drainage, which I did forget to note, we do have a recommended condition on this because we didn't want to have the contractor go through grading plans before this hearing and spend money on that. We did add a condition that our engineer still needs to look at this. They need to look at what the final grades will be just to ensure there's no larger drainage problems if you guys if the village board does approve this. So we did add that condition on there as well. So that's it for the findings.
Can I ask a question now or later?
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you said.
Can I ask a question now
Oh,
or
later.
later? Mr. Ritter.
You can ask now, and then it's still part of the public hearing.
Mr. Ritter, did you guys do an analysis of the lot to building density on that lot with the addition?
Like what the floor, like what the...
How much building can be on the lot?
So it meets the floor area ratio,
Thank
if you know what that is. It's the total building area on the lot. So even with this addition, it would meet that. It meets the lot coverage too, which are pretty high because if you build higher, we kind of want people to do that. So most of the times, FAR and lot coverage aren't an issue, but their proposed addition would meet those. Yes.
All right, so at this time,
Motion to close.
I'd like to have a motion to close the hearing.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of closing the hearing at this time, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Second.
Second.
And I think
Second.
Bob
Bob
seconded.
seconded. Kelly made the motion, Bob seconded.
Thank you.
All right. So, if there are no, well, do you guys have any questions now?
You want to discuss? Oh, the questions were, yeah, that was before in the hearing.
Okay.
So there's a motion to take, someone
Okay.
can make a motion and.
So I'm looking to see if anyone wishes to make a motion regarding the appeal.
Petition.
Petition, yeah. The petition.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the village board grant an 18-foot setback variation to the petitioners, John and Margaret Osador, from section VB Schedule 2 of the zoning ordinance to permit a rear yard setback of 12 feet where the required rear yard setback is 30 feet to construct a 240 square foot home addition with a glass and wood exterior instead of required brick at 16661 Cherry Hill Avenue in the R4 Single Family Residential Cherry Hills Farms PUD zoning district, consistent with the list of submitted plans as attached herein, and adopt findings of fact as proposed by the village staff and as may be amended by the Zoning Board of Appeals at this meeting.
With the following conditions.
With the following conditions. The approval is subject to engineering review of the structure and site grading prior to the issuance of permits.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add to that motion? Okay, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, Don has seconded. Okay,
Any discussion?
now we're open for discussion if anyone has any questions or comments.
Dan, the variation on the 8437 Cherry Hill building, do you know what materials were used in that?
I believe it was brick. There was no waiver that I found addressed for that, so I believe it's brick. But that was a full home addition on the rear.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Any further questions or discussions?
Where is this, where is the 18, you know, I apologize for being late, by the way, but where is the 18-foot setback? Or the variation that they're looking for, the 18 feet?
Yeah, so he was right, so it's the existing home is about 5 feet into the required setback. It's not clearly spelled out on the survey, but it does look like it's actually 5 feet.
So the
that's
house is
5
already encroaching on that setback?
Correct. The existing home was much like the rest of the subdivision. I kind of went over that. There's a lot of home. The home that this is actually going toward, that the addition is going towards, only has about a 3-foot setback from that side lot line. So there's a lot of homes that were kind of all like puzzle pieces kind of put together as this person gets a larger setback on this side, then you reduce it. So that it encroaches 5 feet, which is 5 feet, and then maybe it's 6, I guess. So it's 6 feet encroaching, and then the 12-foot addition. So that would be the 18-foot encroachment from the 30 feet.
Are there any options to remedy that? I mean, is there anything that can be done to put up a structure and still be within that?
Not in the rear of the property. They do have that, the square you kind of see in front is where they could.
Don't even go there.
Yeah, that's not.
Could do some.
It's not even an option.
So that's the one option to meet the
That's
code,
not
where
an
they'd be able to put an addition meeting setbacks, but not in the rear yard.
So
or
nothing in the
side
rear
yard.
nothing could possibly be done without a variance?
Not a home addition, correct. They could do a patio or a deck that's still permitted if they wanted to replace that.
So from the house to the lot line fence, the fence is on the lot line, correct? On the rear of this property?
It's not shown on necessarily on this survey, I don't think. But it looks like it's on, oh, no, it is. Yeah, it's just slightly in from the property line.
And what is that dimension of the house to the lot line, roughly?
24 feet.
24 feet.
And then
The 6
from
foot
that lot
from the
line to
beginning.
the neighbor's house is 3.
Behind the
It's
fence?
their attached garage.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Have the neighbors been formally notified?
Notice was properly distributed, and
Okay.
it was acknowledged on the record.
Yeah, so we sent notices to surrounding properties
Signs were out.
and a sign on the property.
Anything further before we call the question? Okay. Can we go ahead? We're ready.
Chuck?
No.
Gaskell?
Abstain.
Bettenhausen?
No.
Piastyk?
No.
Suffusy?
No. Okay, so the motion did not carry, it failed. What's going to happen now is your next step. There'll be a village board meeting on the 18th of September where this matter will be brought up.
Correct, it'll be a first reading at the board meeting.
First reading.
Typically, it's not a Q&A or presentation, but they can ask questions, so we'd recommend you do that.
Thank you for your time.
Any more agenda items?
I'm sorry.
Are there any more agenda items?
No more agenda items except for the good of the order. If anybody's got anything they need to communicate.
I can do a quick rundown if you guys are interested in stuff going on in Tinley. I can maybe give you since there's a lot of stuff.
Can I ask a
happening.
question first?
Sure.
I was at the village board meeting Tuesday night, and there was a lot of variance approvals that I hadn't even heard about. I mean, these are things.
Yeah,
Well,
the plan commission recommended.
Yeah, so the Cornerstone one and then the
Well, we talked about the cornerstone.
fence one.
We talked about the fence one.
Yeah.
But there was, and for the life of me, I can't remember exactly what they were, but there were several of them.
There's two men in a truck.
2 men in a truck, the parking lot,
Yeah, so
banging
it-
gavel and things like that.
So if they have site plans, if they're doing like a building addition or some, that it requires site plan approval and there's a variation, they just go to plan commission.
Okay, gotcha.
Just to avoid the, here, you gotta go to ZBA and plan commission, and just to sum it up.
Just curious is all I was. I was just wondering why that was. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the things that are occurring?
Yeah, so I guess the 2 men in a truck's going in off of Duvan Drive, so it's kind of a rougher, older industrial park over there. So we're happy to have them going in there. They're just doing a parking lot addition, but they're kind of beefing up the building and doing a bunch of landscaping. It'll have some nice curb appeal. And then the banging gavel was approved to have a bathroom kind of enclosure on the outside where they're going to have a pretty big patio. So that's the brewery going into the old boat building. I think that's their last approval they need, so I know they're working on plans. Now, last I heard, they were looking for, a spring, summer opening next year, but they're still working on getting building permits in. Next to that is the old attic door building. So SIP Wine Bar went through the Plan Commission approvals, they went through workshop and workshop and public hearing with the Plan Commission, so they were recommended for approval, and they go on September 18th for adoption since they were recommended unanimously. So that's like a self-serve wine bar. They're doing a small addition on the south side of the building that'll kind of looks like it mirrors kind of the old original house that was built in 1893. So I think they did a good job tying that together. The big one in the room's the Boulevard South Street project. So that went for a workshop at Plan Commission on August 16th, and then the public hearing for that September 6th. So if you guys are looking, want to look forward to what they're doing. It's almost 300,000 square feet between the apartments and then the commercial on the ground floor. Pretty big. They're planning on doing it in 2 phases though, so they'll kind of do commercial and 66 units in the first phase, kind of on that hard corner, and then as soon as they kind of see the market, then they'll build the second phase. So that's going September 6th for the public hearing, and I believe the incentive's going on September 11th to the committees for an incentive they're looking for as well. Then next to that, kind of between that South Street project and Bremen Station, or in Citibank, is Bremen Station, which is a little bit smaller project, but a smaller version of basically what the Boulevard is, doing a restaurant commercial space on the ground floor, and then indoor parking garage, and I believe 39 apartments on that one. So that'll kind of finish out South Street there, except for the hard corner where I think it's
That's the
Lovey's.
Bremen Cash Store location?
Yeah, so that's the old Bremen Cash Store
That much?
location.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so they've tried to tie in some of that. We also still have some of the original beams from Bremen Station, so they're looking at ways that they can maybe use those. They can't use them structurally, but maybe architecturally, kind of try. Because I think that was kind of a sore thing when they tore that down. I don't think there's too many happy people. Besides that, then there's the North Street Plaza. So that's been moving forward at a pretty quick pace. The Harmony Plaza, where they're doing kind of a stage, ice ribbon. They want to do their outdoor music things. It would be 250 days. I think they're planning on doing events there, the farmers markets, everything else. They're hoping to get shovels in the ground and start building that spring next year as well. So might be busy down there really early next year, but if it all gets done at once, it might be good. And then there's also the North Street development, so just east of where that plaza is planning to go, and then the Central Middle School site. We've had some initial talks with developers there as well. So just looking at developing that portion. So lots of stuff in the downtown. I believe we have nothing for the next meeting, so that'll likely be canceled. I'm sure you'll get an email from Barb. So got nothing there at this time. So
What date would that be?
September 13th.
September 13th.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything to offer before we call for adjournment? Okay, then we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of adjourning tonight's meeting, signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Don't you dare. All right. Barb, I have a bunch of stuff for the record. All
Yeah,
those
the photographs stay
and
with
stuff.
the record too.
Got a funny feeling we're gonna need those.